So I picked up something pretty cool. This is a first generation, first year 1973 Honda ATC70. This thing's in pretty good shape overall. It actually runs really well. I think at one point it was kind of partially restored and rims were painted and forks and stuff. This gas tank had been painted at once, but we've got some peeling going on. So it's got a few little issues. Original rear fenders are kind of faded, just a couple little cracks in them. But the goal here is get this thing cleaned up a little bit. I've also got a front fender for it, which this looks like it was a red one at one point that was painted. So I think our plan is to freshen this thing up a little bit. We're going to repaint this tank, put some new decals on it, see if we can get a little more polish out of these rear fenders and stuff. Yeah, overall this thing runs pretty good. It seems to drive fine and stuff too. Brakes are nice. Headlight even works. So we're just going to do a quick little refresh on this thing. Make it look the way it's supposed to again. So let's pull this gas tank off and start getting this old paint off. All right, to get this gas tank off here, had to remove a couple bolts there on the seat, and the seat slides out of that back there. Gas tank is just kind of held in place with a little rubber grommet there. We will have to unhook the fuel lines here, let that gas drain out. The petcock on this is actually on the carburetor side, and there's just a couple little pegs underneath there, and the gas tank should slide off back that way. All right, so we got the gas tank off here and stuff. We've got some little surface rust. Some surface rust down inside there. I've kind of power washed this out once, but it's not horrible, but we've got a little bit of rust in there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill this thing up with some rust remover, vapor rust, stuff like that. We'll let it sit for a while and then flush it back out. I got my outlets plugged there. Well, let's fill this thing up and then let it sit for a little bit and see if we get rid of some rust. All right, while my tank is sitting there soaking, we're going to attack this front fender here. So like I said, this was a red one. That was painted orange. I think my plan here is to strip this paint off and we're going to paint it orange again and just clean it up good. And it should look just fine. So we're going to take a little paint remover, spray that on there and power wash this off and see if we can get all this old paint off of here. Well, this is doing the job here. Just spray that on there and started wrinkling up pretty quickly. So it shouldn't take much to blow all this old paint off and get this thing nice and cleaned up again. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's blow it off here. Oh, there it went. Stay put. Well, that's working pretty easy. Coming up pretty good. We'll spray the bottom side and then get this thing prepped to paint it again. So here's our fender. Got everything cleaned up. It's already had a little light sanding done to it to begin with. So what we're going to start with, since these are plastics, is we're going to use some adhesion promoter. We're going to do a couple of coats of this. And then we're going to use this Rust-Oleum engine enamel. So I've used this in the past. It's really resistant to oils and chemicals and stuff like that. And it'll do a good job. Yes, you could absolutely have this automotively painted and that would look excellent. But on little things like this, you don't always need to have something done with a super expensive setup to get a nice result. So, let's get to painting this thing. Okay, we've got a adhesion coat on there and then some primer on top of there. We're gonna let this dry just a little bit before we do a top coat. And we're gonna tackle this thing. We got that kind of cleaned up on the inside. It looks a lot better down inside there. We're gonna strip the paint off this guy too and see if we find any little pinholes here and stuff. There's definitely some bubbling in this paint. Hopefully we can kind of find that pretty easily. And here it goes. It's bubbling up. Stuff's pretty satisfying to watch. Okay, let this sit for a little bit and we're gonna blow this off the power washer and should have a pretty clean tank to start with again. Round 2 of soaking. Got most of this kind of sprayed off and brushed off, but we're doing another round of the paint remover here. Let's get a little more down there. All right, well, let's sit here again and keep going at it. Almost done. Okay, here's our cleaned gas tank and our fender. This one's just drying right now. So this tank looks like there's been a couple little spots that have been fixed before, which somebody did a good job, so that's going to be just fine. But here's where those pinholes are at. So we got some there and a couple along there. So we are going to use some special tank welds, basically gas tank sealer epoxy stuff that's fuel resistant. We're going to use that to kind of patch that up, these little holes, and sand this, and then we'll start painting this tank too. Hopefully it'll look nice, just as shiny and nice as that one. So there's our front fender. I pulled off one of the rear fenders. These are the originals, original orange. We're gonna see if we can save these a little bit. So this scale, we're gonna hit this with a power washer first, see if we can kind of essentially water sand a bunch of that off, and then we'll start sanding at this thing and see if we can get to polish up. If it seems to be decent, that'll be great. If not, we might just paint them too. Power washing is making a difference. That usually takes a lot of that kind of deep scaling off. So we'll hit this pretty good here and then start sanding it and see if we can get some shine out of this thing. So we've got our tank seams patched with some tank repair kit here. So we're gonna sand this stuff, smooth it down, get this thing cleaned up. Then we'll be ready to paint this tank. Hopefully it'll match this one. Our other fender here, we got this cleaned up as far as power washing. Let's see, we've definitely gained some orange back, but there's a lot of scale left behind. So that's kind of what that scale looks like. As the power washer takes it off, it leaves a pretty rough finish back. So we are going to try and sand this down and everything. I've got a series of like 120 grit all the way up to about 1,000 grit. We'll just keep kind of stepping it up and see how much shine we can get back out of these plastics. Here's my first round of sanding. The fender's here with 120 grit. Got most of that scale off. Got nice scratches in here, obviously. So we're going to step to 220 next and keep going finer and finer, and got good color back into this thing. So we'll see if we can get some actual shine back into it too, and see how polished we can make these plastics again. Well, here's after some 220. Just washed it off here, get the dust off of it. Very good color. We're just going to keep stepping it up here. I think we're going to switch to some 600 now. And this is coming along pretty nice. This is after 600 wet sanding. It's nice and smooth. No scale to it anymore. We're going to switch to 1,000, do some wet sanding, and then see what it looks like. Well, here's the final product of that fender there compared to the one that I painted. These are a pretty darn good match. That orange is technically like a Daytona orange, I think is what they call it, but looks like it's basically the same. It's kind of the Mopar engine orange. It's gonna look good on here again. Now we're just gonna do the second fender. Well, it's time to assemble. We got our tank painted. Got that front fender painted. The rear fender's polished again and cleaned up a bunch. This thing's ready to put back together. So I think, and I've got new decals for everything too. So I think we'll slip this gas tank on first and get these fenders in place and everything too. It's gonna look like a whole new machine all of a sudden. Gas tank is back in place. Throw this front fender on next. That just bolts in place there, right on the forks. Put that in, and a couple things left. Put some decals on this thing, and it's gonna look brand new. Wow, look at this thing. Those fenders are so night and day different on the rear. They look awesome. Oh, up front here, this was kind of rubbing to begin with on the head bolts. I put a little piece of electrical tape there for the time being, but I think I'm gonna try to find like a little rubber trim piece or something that I can kind of put on there, just so that when it turns, it's hitting on those little head bolts and stuff, which this plastic had some gouges in there to begin with, which is kind of common on these, but it'd be nice to avoid that if possible. So we've got some new decals to put on it, and then we're done. So here's what we got for decals. We got tank decals. This one also goes on the tank. That one goes on a little recoil, but we've already got one there, as well as a little caution on the side, so we won't reuse those. And then the little ATC70 goes on the rear fender. So let's put these things on here. Well, that is pretty cool. Got that on there. Just got to do one other side. Got the little ATC70 sticker on the back. Just need to add decal on this side too, and then we're done. Well, look at this thing. It's all done. It looks so much better. These plastics on the rear came out quite nice. a million times better than it was before. Can you imagine having one of these as a kid back in the 70s? Like, you've definitely been the coolest person around. Headlight even works on this thing. I ended up adding like a little trim piece down there just from where it was rubbing on the fender. So I'm pretty sure this front fender was probably from a later 70. It doesn't fit quite right on there, but a little trim piece there. Keep it from scratching up the fender. Well, maybe we should go for a ride here quick. I barely fit on this thing. You know, for a 70cc, these things actually move pretty good. I saw like a meme once that was like talking about these 70s and how they were designed for kids and everything, and now the only people that use them are 50-year-olds driving around with pit bikes and stuff. Which I think that's what this one will be, is something for somebody's collection. Well, this project's done. I'm happy with it. All right, follow along for the next thing. Got some big stuff coming.